There are times you get this feeling, this sensation in your body that something is wrong. You sense as if danger is approaching. You sense as if it's this cold feeling. I can't really describe it here, but probably you are familiar with this. All right? You talk to someone and they tell you something, and there's nothing wrong with the individual speaking to you. You are on good terms. There's no harm involved. But what they're saying to you, somewhere you sense that there's something wrong with what they're saying. You're not claiming they're lying, but what they're saying, there may be something behind it. It may be that you're talking to one of your friends, and she said that her husband was away for a business trip. And when she says that, you sense it as if there's something not right here. It can be that it's just you being suspicious for nothing. So it doesn't really have to mean anything. But if you get this feeling when someone is saying something to you, and concerning what they are saying to you, you feel uncomfortable, don't ignore it. If there's something wrong with you, that what they've said made you uncomfortable, then it's time for you to face that and be delivered from it. If there's nothing wrong on your behalf, that means that what they're saying, I'm not saying they're lying, but what they're saying, there may be something wrong with it. Alright, I'm going to give an illustration now. And during this illustration, you will get what I'm teaching here. Okay, Julia. Julia is from Ukraine, and one day she visits Lviv. I'm not sure if I pronounced it right. It's a big city in the west of Ukraine, near Romania. And when she's in town, one of her friends takes her to church. She thinks, well, why can't I go to church? And then, while they're driving in the car, they are driving into an industrial territory. It's not really industrial, except there are big factories, but there are many warehouses and storehouses over there. No, storehouses, I mean. Warehouse means something else in some English countries. And there are some fast food chains at the roads. And she's thinking, what? What is this? She asks her friend, where are we going? The friend says, we're going to church, as I told you. Then the car stops. And Julia asks, okay, where's the church? It's right in front of you, the friend says. Julia looks and she sees something that looks like, it's not a football stadium, that's not what it is. Something like a media corporation that's in front of her. It's a big building with an artificial pond with a channel around it. There is a high fence of iron with points on top of the fence, and there is a parking lot also that's open, and there's a small bus station, and there are lots of trees and forests behind it. And there are some other buildings over there, but those are buildings where they sell cars. So there are some business buildings. And Julia asked her, is this a church? And then the friend said, yeah, this is a church. It's one of the biggest churches in the whole of Ukraine. This pastor is very, very famous. And the friend begins to tell about how anointed that pastor is and how much miracles are happening at that church. So Julia attends a church service, and the people are kind and all of that. And they leave. After that, Julia cut off that friend. She didn't delete her from Facebook or social media, but just stopped the contact. Because this is what Julia was thinking. Anyone that builds a church where people are living, in the center of a village or in a city center, because the church must be accessible for the members. And that church was quite big. if it's one of the biggest churches of Ukraine, why is it built in an industrial complex that's so remote from where the houses of people are? Why is it near a forest? Why have they built a channel around it with a high fence as if it's a stronghold that they're defending? When Julia was in the church, she indeed saw it. There were many people there. She thought that maybe 3,000 people were there at the service. And Julia realized that many of the people that attended the church were people with good paying jobs. But then Julia began to think, there are no stores in here. Nothing's really being sold. How can they manage this place? Who's paying the bills? She saw on the outside there is an office. But then she began to think, okay, this place needs to be maintained. Those people paying their tithes each month cannot be sufficient to maintain this place. And who gave permit to build a church over here? Of all places. So Julia went and looked for that pastor online. And she also went through old newspapers. She didn't just trust only Google. And she found out that this pastor used to be a member of another megachurch, but this megachurch was from Romania. And this guy was also married to one of the nieces of that pastor of that megachurch in Romania. The couple divorced, and since then, that pastor came to Ukraine and he established his megachurch. And Julia found out that the building cost around 23 million euros. They didn't use euros in Ukraine, but the people that financed it came from France, from Germany. So the whole situation was very weird. Nothing about it added up. So Julia realized immediately that there's something behind that church. And indeed, what Julia was not aware of was that the pastor of that church, he had people from the mafia, from the German mafia, that wanted to have a doorway to deal in the prostitution business in Ukraine. The Ukraine, I mean. Because there are many prostitutes, young girls being how I say it, they're trafficked between the Middle East and the Ukraine. And these people from the German mafia wanted to have their own office in the Ukraine in order to be involved. They needed to have a cover, a very good cover. So the mafia approached this guy, who was still in Romania at the time, and he asked him, if you are a faithful member of this church, we can help you establish your own church. You can do your own church things as long as you allow us to use the building the rest of the week when you're not around. So the guy accepted it. And indeed, the donations that the church received, the pastor used for himself to purchase his big house and all of that, and the money that the mafia invested in it was used to build that building. And also was also used to air the church services on TV. So those church members were thinking that it was the power of the Holy Spirit that caused that project to succeed. But no, it was a criminal enterprise, disguised as a church. And the pastor knew what was behind it. And the pastor was good friends with the German mafia. And once in a while, agents from the German mafia would come at a church and select some of the young women that attend the church in order to recruit them for the sex industry. The pastor also permitted that to happen. So once in a while, 2 or 3 young women from that church would vanish. And because it's a mega church, around 4,000 members. That's why they need to have 2 services each Sunday. Because you have so many people, nobody noticed that some of the women were disappearing. Now, Julia was not aware of all of this. She just looked at the context. A church that big, built on a remote location, near a highway, in an industrial complex, near a forest, and the church is also guarded by a high fence with an artificial, with a channel around it. When she saw that, without doing any investigation, she realized this doesn't add up. Now look, in this case, it was obvious that something didn't add up. But there are instances when it's not obvious that something doesn't add up. Here's the thing. People are not used at looking at the bigger picture. And you know what? Those church members that are attending the church, here's the deal. That pastor used to go to the Ukraine often, and he would have church services in diverse churches throughout the Ukraine, especially in the west of the Ukraine. And a lot of people fell for the things he was saying. He was speaking truth, and he was addressing things a lot of people didn't want to address, and a lot of people felt touched with what he was saying. And when he was a guest speaker at many churches in the west of Ukraine, miracles would happen. People that had terminal cancer that were about to die, the cancer disappeared and they were alive. So things happened. But here's the thing, that pastor was a warlock in disguise. He operated under a charm. And all charms are satanic. He operated under a satanic charm. And this satanic charm enables demons to perform lying signs and wonders. And it's this charm that also attracted the German mafia, because the German mafia also used their charms, and the charms of the German mafia and the charm of that guy, they met, because they were both using the demonic realm, and that's how that church came into being. There were people in the Ukraine who heard about this mega church being built, and when they heard about the location, immediately noticed this ain't right. But those thousands of people and the relatives of all those people that attended the church, they couldn't see it. The only thing they is they were blinded by the lying signs and wonders that had happened. They were convinced that this pastor had the anointing of the Holy Spirit upon him, that he was a prophet sent by the Most High. Because what the pastor was saying, 95% of the time was true. And he could defend it with the Bible, with Bible verses. So people thought, you see, he preached in line with Scripture. Yes, Holy Spirit. 5% of the things he was saying was suggestive. Things that you wouldn't think are against Christ. But here's the thing, because people were so overwhelmed by the 95% that was truth, that 5% confusion that he also preached mixed in, people didn't notice it. Because that 5%, if you would have discernment, you would analyze all the messages he said, you would have noticed that 5%, this confusion. And because that confusion that he's preached, it contained 95% truth, 5% confusion. The confusion that he once in a while mentioned contradicted all the other truths all the other things he was saying. But because people were fooled by the lying signs and wonders and by the Bible verse that defended what he was saying, people were already under a spell. They were already trapped. And that's how many young women, also underage women, disappeared while attending church. Sometimes a young girl who attended church would invite her friends, and the friends would attend the church, and at the church there was this handler of the German mafia that would look at who would check out those girls, and the friend that invited them would keep coming at the church, but 2 or 3 weeks later, one of the friends that went to that church went missing, and nobody sees the connection. That, let me say like this, let's say you had Svetlana attended that church, And she invited 5 friends of hers to visit the church just once. The friends agreed, they came, and they left. Now, Sabrina, one of the friends that Svetlana invited, 2 weeks later she went missing. Now what happened? When Svetlana invited them, Sabrina was also there. There was a handler over there who pretended to be just a believer over there, and he saw this fairly beautiful young woman, Sabrina, and he made a chat with her, just as a church member. And Sabrina thought, it's safe. But that handler followed the group of young ladies when they left the church, especially that Sabrina. He figured out where Sabrina lived, and within 2 weeks, the group of dogs came by and they kidnapped Sabrina. They didn't kidnap her immediately because people would have noticed, whoa, she went to a church and she never returned. No, they waited for 2 weeks. Because they knew if they would have kidnapped the Sabrina immediately, the church would get into the news and people would figure out things. So, what am I trying to say with this parable? Because what I've just told you here is fictive. It's a parable, okay? But such things happen, okay? Not only with churches, it happens often in the world that you have an organization or a business that is operative, but behind that business there are other things happening. Now look, about that Julia that I began with. Julia is a believer with discernment. She has been delivered and she has insight. But now, after that this Sabrina disappeared, there were some of her colleagues, well, she worked at a restaurant, she was in her late teens. Some of her colleagues began to ask, who would want to kidnap Sabrina? She was always a quiet girl, she never caused trouble. 4 months passed when she was missing. And then one day, the brother of Sabrina approached a young man who was a colleague of Sabrina about a church. And the guy asked the brother, let's say the guy's name is Oleg. Oleg asked the brother, dude, why are you bothering me with this? I'm not the police. And the brother said, please, I want you to look at this. You are very smart. Okay, Oleg said, okay, what is it you want me to see? Send me it by email and send me it complete, because if you want me to look into something, I want it to be complete. You know that I do things precisely. The brother said, I know that you do it. That's why I'm giving it to you. I'll send you the mail tonight. So that night, Oleg looks into the files. And the files were police reports that were online. Everyone could visit them about many young women that went missing past 4 years. The amount was 400. So Oleg looked through the files. Oleg had a very high IQ, and he had a strong analytic way of thinking. So Oleg realized, hold on a minute. Of these around 400 women that went missing, 200 of them attended that church once or twice. Or when you look at their social media, because he went through the social media of the Facebooks of around 20 of those other 200 women that were not obviously related to that church, and he figured out that they knew someone that was related to, that they knew someone that went to that church. So it's then that Oleg began to realize, hold on a minute, something's wrong with that church over there. And then Oleg decided to talk to Svetlana about the night that they went to that church. And Svetlana said, well, it was just a church service, it was great. Oleg asked her, Svetlana, whom did Sabrina speak to of the church members? Ah, I remember now, Svetlana told him. She spoke to Brother Dean. And Oleg asked, who's Brother Dean? Should that Brother Dean, well, he is a guy from the Netherlands who is living in the Ukraine, and he attends a church. He is a very kind man. He works as an accountant in Kiev. So after hearing this, Oleg decides to visit that church at a service. He locates where this Brother Dean is. The moment Oleg saw the guy, he sensed a bad vibe coming from him. But nobody else noticed this. And Oleg didn't want to get too much involved. But Oleg found out that this guy did work as an accountant in Kiev, but that the office where he worked, let me say this, the office where he worked did not exist. When you type in the address in Google, you will find the location, but when you use Google Street View, you see it's an abandoned building. One day when Oleg went to Kiev by train, he visited the place, and indeed it was an abandoned building. It was a ruin, but yet a business was located over there. Oleg knew that that was bad. So it's then that Oleg finally got the puzzle together. He realized that this Brother Dean was into human trafficking, and that he used that church in order to find targets to recruit. So when Oleg went to the brother of Sabrina, the brother told him, Oleg, I'm glad you agreed to look into this, because I knew I wasn't the only one who noticed it. Now look, I'm going to close this recording. Just realize, just because you feel uncomfortable with something doesn't mean that there really is something going on. It can be that it's just you, okay? But don't dismiss an uncomfortable feeling just because you don't want to cause any trouble. There are times that it's your soul. Let me say your soul is sensing energy fields, okay? So when there's danger nearby, your soul may detect a heavy contention of bad energy. And your soul translates this as physical discomfort. Your body begins to produce those stress hormones, or these hormones that make you feel uncomfortable. But you often respond, let's say you react to what's going on in your body by either taking a pill or whatever, and you don't realize that it's the alarm system of your soul sending a message to you that something's wrong. Now that often happens more than people are aware of. And about this parable I gave onto you, those church members that attended the church, they were under a spell. Their alarm system of their soul was damaged. It didn't work properly. Because if it worked properly, they would have noticed immediately that the whole situation of that church is wrong, that it doesn't add up, and it's very weird. Not even cults that pretend to be Christian would build a building remote like that, because they know it would immediately draw a lot of attention and people begin to ask questions. Not even cults and criminal enterprises would do something like that. But now, for some reason, people couldn't see that something was wrong with it. Now look, when you notice something is wrong, don't panic. Don't begin to cause a lot of trouble, and don't begin to act out and make your own conclusions based upon your limited perception. Look at the bigger picture. Just look at the bigger picture. Sometimes by just looking at the bigger picture, but from looking from the wider perspective, you already notice things. This is a skill a lot of people need to learn. A lot of people are so much influenced by the phrase minding your own business that they don't dare to look things from the wider perspective, because the wider perspective involves other people. Forget about what you've learned by the world. Learn to look things from the wider perspective. It is life-saving. That being said, be at peace.